You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers! Today I chat to Ansi Van Der Walt, one of our South African Vet Rehabbers. She has her own practice called Physio for Pets, which is based in Johannesburg. It's one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcasts, and I love these podcasts because I learn something new every time I interview a vet rehabber about how they run their practice. My hope is that we can learn from vet rehabbers from all over the world, and if they can share their wins and losses, we can use these as a guide to build our own practices and our profession, and hopefully learn from their mistakes and not make the same ones that they made. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the vet rehabbers that so kindly and freely share their knowledge and intimate details of the journey that they've taken in this wonderful profession of veterinary rehabilitation. Because of all of you, we learn. We have such a great community, guys, and you can join us if you're not already joined in our Facebook groups. We have the Hydro Vet Rehabbers, Small Animal Vet Rehabbers, Equine Vet Rehabbers, and then the Business Vet Rehabbers. I'll share all the links in the description. Before I head over to chat with Ansi, a quick word from our sponsors. Choosing the right therapy laser and PEMF system for your practice are big decisions, and that's why our Response System has been helping to make that decision easy for over 35 years by offering both Class 3B and Class 4 lasers, as well as a full line of PEMF products designed for both small animals and horses. All of their systems are fully rechargeable and adapted to international grids. You can find out more at responsesystem.com. So over to Ansi. Hi, Ansi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Megan. It's lovely to be here with you.
Ansi, won't you tell our listeners a little about yourself and how you got into the field of veterinary rehabilitation?
Sure. So I actually went to study physio because that's, I always wanted to do animal physio, and that's the way that I was told back then, the only way to get into the profession. So I did my human physio degree always with the object and the purpose of getting into animal physio. So okay. I started practicing
from the very beginning. You were animals. You were never intended to treat humans.
No, exactly. And in fact, I was told to lie in my interview to get into physio school because they took limited amounts of students, and they said if I said it was to do animals, they wouldn't, necessarily give me a spot. Okay. So I had to lie and pretend that I was really interested in treating people.
Okay. So did you ever treat people? Or did you just...
Yes. So for the first 2 years of my career, I had a half-day human physio post. Okay. And one of the partners in that practice was the person who I also worked for doing animal physio.
Okay. So then you started to just increase the amount of animals that you did, and then eventually made the move straight over to animals.
Yes. So after 2 years, I decided to go full-time into animals only.
Okay. And what have you found the difference between treating the humans and treating people? I mean, treating humans and people, treating animals and treating people.
I would say very little, really. The main difference is not being able to get a description of symptoms from your patient, which is a big thing. It's very helpful if the patient can tell you how they're feeling, what they're feeling, when did they start to feel it. And in animal physio, we rely on the clients to give us all the information. So that, I would say, is the biggest difference.
Okay. And so now you obviously have your practice. Whereabouts is it based? And tell us a little bit about the practice.
So we're based in Midrand, and about 10 years ago, I started moving from a primarily horse treatment practice to a mixed treatment practice, and over time focusing more on dog and small animal patients. So we're based in Midrand in Johannesburg, full-time animal practice, 6 days a week. So the main focus now is companion animal treatments.
I think that happens quite often when you start treating horses, and then as soon as you start with the small animals, trying to juggle the two doesn't seem to ever work, because you're like, I'm not going to remember when I was doing both too. You'll go to the stables and then, you can't catch the horse that you need to treat or something. They can't find the horse or something. And then you start looking at your watch and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to get back to the clinic and there's traffic for those small animal patients. Is that the reason that you decided to shift towards small animals, or is there another reason?
So there were several reasons for that decision. And it was a bit of an evolution over time. One of the reasons is exactly what you are talking about, which is your ability to really plan your time. Because there's a lot of factors. It's, often you would get to the yard and, oh, sorry, didn't we tell you the horse was going in for a lameness workup today? So the horse isn't even there. Also, it's more challenging to keep your cash flow under control. With a practice where clients come to you, it's a lot easier to just take their credit card at the end of a session.
Yeah.
If the client, with the horse treatments, the client's usually not even present. So it's a lot easier for a client to run up a bill and then use it with the cash flow challenge. And yes, getting stuck in traffic, running late, roadblocks, it was just the time management aspect of equine practice is a real challenge. So that was the one part. And then the other thing is just the variety of conditions you see in small animal practice is really, really interesting. And if you're interested in the academic side of rehab, it just gives you so much more variety. So, so gradually that shift happened.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing about equine practice is that, when you're driving, you can't do invoices and things like that. So, and then when you're trying to get that money, so having debtors is probably one of the worst things. And it takes up time, right? All the time. So following up with that client to try and get that payment, to check to see if the payment's coming in. That's, you do sometimes have that in a small animal, but if you've got a really strict receptionist, then they just say, like, you can't leave without paying, and then it's all good. I used to have one like that.
Yeah, that helps a lot. But yeah, so I just found that the business model of a small animal practice is better. It's easier to manage. There's a lot less unpredictable factors, and it is easier to manage your cash flow and your admin side of it.
And you're using your time more efficiently because there isn't
Exactly.
that travel. And you can never really charge, right, for your travel. So you can never really charge what the time that you would actually, if you were treating for travel. So, I mean, maybe some people can, but I think most of us feel bad, to charge that same amount for traveling. And then there's traffic and things like that. So
yeah, there's traffic, or Joburg Metro Police has a roadblock and that takes 40 minutes to get through. So yeah, it's just difficult to work those unpredictable costs into equine practice.
So is it just you, or do you have any other therapists that work with you?
So I'm the only physiotherapist at the practice. I have a lot of people who help me with sort of drying the dogs in between and helping hold the dogs. So I have 3 assistants that I use for different bits and pieces, but I'm the only physio at the practice, yes.
And so you're obviously doing hydrotherapy. Do you have a pool and an underwater treadmill?
I have an underwater treadmill and a heated pool. So we do a lot of hydrotherapy, but we do a huge variety of gym type based exercises. We've got the hydrotherapy, we've got land treadmills, we've got power plates, and we've got, all the usual toys that we play with the balls and the peanut balls and all of that type of thing. So yeah, this practice is very therapeutic exercise based. So our main focus is on rehabilitation exercise rather than, I do a lot of hands-on treatment, but I really quickly want to get the patients to do rehab exercise to get strength and mobility back.
Okay. Are you seeing quite a lot of performance dogs?
Yes. So you see a lot of the agility dogs, some of the flyable dogs, some IPO dogs. So a lot of the dogs that people compete quite seriously with do come and see us.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I might have seen on Facebook you also do agility or some type of performance with your dogs. Is that right?
Yes, I do agility. Yeah, that's my sport as well.
Okay, so that's quite nice because you're obviously in with that community. Are there other vet rehabbers that are in the area that are also doing agility, or is it primarily you that is servicing all those performance dogs?
No, definitely. Kayla does. She works for Tanya Grantham at Four Ways. She also does agility. But it's really nice to be able to have other therapists to understand the demands of the sport. And I must say that's one of the really nice aspects of it, is to really understand what the demands are, what it is that is the concerns for the agility handlers and the working dog handlers. And having other therapists who are also engaged in the sport's really great for talking about these sort of things.
Yeah, and it's also nice to be involved because you also have an understanding, understanding of those type of people. So you know exactly who your audience is and what their worries are, and their problems are, and how to solve them.
Yes, exactly. It's very important to understand exactly what concern the person is coming from and what it means to them.
Yeah.
So, a loss of performance in an agility dog means a lot more sometimes to a person who competes than, a dog that maybe climbs onto the couch a little bit more slowly at home.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their dogs to be pain-free and healthy, but there's an impact that you need to understand for somebody who's maybe spends a lot of money on show entries and that type of thing, and they've got a more immediate concern within a time frame.
Do you find up there, so for the listeners, Ansi lives in the northern part of South Africa and I'm in the southern part of South Africa, so in Cape Town, and she's up in Gauteng. I can remember when I practiced, the agility owners and the people competing in agility here, there was quite a lack of awareness. Now, this was a few years ago, and I'm sure that things have changed now, but maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, quite a lack of awareness of strengthening and the importance of strengthening. And do you find that there now, or do you think that people are sort of more open to making sure that their dogs are strong enough to be able to perform?
I think that's changed a lot, and there's a lot of factors that have led to that. I think it's been a trend across the world in terms of canine rehab, where there's been a lot more narrative about canine conditioning and canine core exercises. A lot of people moving into that and being quite public about that trend in dog fitness on Facebook and other social media.
Yeah.
We do a lot of courses for handlers on injury prevention, stretching, massage, and we've been doing that for several years. And I love going to, we've got a whole warm-up routine that we teach people using a tire. And I love going to agility shows and seeing all these tires dotted around by the cars, and people take their tires with them to do their warm-up exercises. So that, I think, in general, that has changed significantly. And definitely in Johannesburg, there's been a very, very positive uptake in improved awareness of fitness and strength and injury prevention.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So are these courses that you do, are they like they're like owner workshops, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, cool. The tire thing sounds really, really interesting, and it's great to hear that the owners are practicing what you're teaching.
It's really nice to see. It's nice to see, and it's nice to see that even after several years, they're still sticking to it.
Yeah.
And I think that is a sign of the benefit that they see from putting more effort into canine conditioning.
So let's chat a little about the marketing of your practice. So obviously these workshops that you do is an ideal way to create awareness about your practice. What are the other marketing things that you do to get referrals or get pet owners to know about you?
The main drive for marketing is through social media. I think that is just the most cost-effective way of reaching your potential client base at the moment. I don't do a lot of marketing to the veterinary practices anymore, but I must say when I started, I did. So probably for the first 5 years, there was a lot of communication with the vets from a marketing point of view to get them on board. And I think that as a referral source has stabilized quite a lot. So the focus has shifted a lot more to direct communication with the client base. And I have definitely found that if you can use your social media effectively, and that's also a learning curve, how to use social media in a way that really, really works for you. But if you can use social media effectively, that's just your most cost-effective way of marketing that gets you the most results.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a learning curve, and the problem with it is that it keeps changing. So just when
Yes,
you
it does.
thought and you've worked out the strategy and this is working, the next minute it's not. So yeah, I mean, it just you have to keep changing it up. You have to keep doing different things, and that's time consuming to work out how to do that. And so, are you doing the social media yourself, or do you have a member of your team that does it for you?
No, I do it myself.
Okay. So do you
And I
allocate?
quite enjoy doing it. So.
You do, yeah. Oh, that's good. So do you allocate time every day to do it? So, or do you just do it ad hoc, like when you get a chance?
I have a social media schedule that I try and stay to. I think if you plan your social media calendar, it helps you not have to spend so much time wandering and maybe posting things that don't work for you.
Yeah.
If you put a bit of time in planning your social media strategy and setting out certain goals for your social media on a regular basis, whether that's weekly or monthly, it actually helps save time in the end, because you can focus a lot better on what it is that you want to communicate via your social media platform.
Yeah, because you don't actually realize how much time you waste sitting, what shall I post, and scrolling through your images and seeing, trying to choose something and then thinking, like, is that a relevant topic?
Yeah.
So,
With social media, I found that the most important element is being sure about what the message is that you want to communicate and being clear about what it is that you want people to know about you and your practice. Because that's where I've seen it doesn't work very effectively if you just post random things for the sake of having activity on your social media sites.
yeah.
It doesn't have the impact. And then you're really just throwing time away.
So are your posts directed at like a specific pet owner? So like do you mainly do the performance dogs, or do you have sort of different campaigns where you're looking at arthritic dogs, maybe senior dogs? How do you set that all up?
So I definitely have in mind the different subsegments of my client base. So there will be things more in terms of performance, optimizing performance, and then there are more things that will speak to the pet owner clients that just wants to keep their dog comfortable, especially with the degenerative joint diseases. So I do segment my client base a little bit when I plan my social media communications, but not too much. I try and make it so it's relevant for everybody, because in reality, the guy with the 3-year-old top level agility dog has an 11-year-old at home that's struggling to get up in the mornings.
Yeah.
So I try and make my communications relevant to everybody.
So back to the veterinary referrals, like obviously now your practice is really established. So you're not really concentrating on marketing towards the vets. What was the thing that you think that you did in those first 5 years that really helped to get vet referrals?
To me, it was a lot of listening rather than talking. So it's very easy to go and speak to a vet with the idea of, I'm going to tell them what I do. And that doesn't work nearly as well as going to a vet and saying, what is it that you need?
Yeah.
So it really is valuable to listen to the vet and see what they're struggling with. What is it that will help their clients get better results? Because at the end of the day, they also want their clients to be happy that they referred the dog to you. So if you say, well, I can do X, Y, and Z, and the vet goes, well, I don't really have a problem with X, Y, and Z. My Christians all seem to do really well. then you may as well not have made that visit. You really need to find what it is that'll make them feel that you can add value to their practice. Because
That's
there's
really great
otherwise no
advice.
point.
Yeah. I really like that. That's really great advice because you want to be solving their problems. So, like,
Absolutely.
they've got whatever their problems are, and most of the musculoskeletal problems we can solve. So, first ask them what their problem is, and then tell them how you can solve it and how you can help them. And I mean, obviously, being a vet myself, one of the worst things is to have a client and a patient where you've hit a brick wall and you don't know what else to do. The dog's been operated on, you've given it every single anti-inflammatory and painkiller that you can think of, and you've reached the end of all the things that you can do, and there's no one that you can refer to, when there is someone to refer to and somebody who can now solve those problems for you. It's such a relief, an absolute relief, because you've got a client who's now disappointed because you haven't been able to help them. So I really like that. Ask them where you can help them.
Yes. So I spend a lot more time listening and asking them questions than just telling them what it is that you think you bring to the party.
Yeah. So let's chat a little bit about the equipment. So us vet rehabbers all know that there's some amazing equipment out there, but the problem is that it costs lots of money. So you've obviously accumulated quite a lot of expensive equipment over time. How did you make the decision to buy the equipment, and was it something that you were nervous about, like especially something like the underwater treadmill? Obviously that's a major investment.
Yes, absolutely. So I think equipment is a really big challenge for anybody in the field of veterinary rehab. Because they're kind of all really nice to have. So initially, I got all the equipment because I liked it and I saw the potential in everything. So you do take out the finance. Most of it you need to get finance for, so you end up paying it off over a couple of years. But it is really hard to work that cost into your costing as a professional. So if you were to do a manual treatment on a dog, so you were doing some massage and some joint mobilizations and maybe some electrotherapy, and you charge X amount for that. If you then work out that same amount of value of your time, plus the cost of paying back something like an underwater treadmill, plus its running costs, you really need to get a lot of value out of that piece of equipment. So it would very much depend, I think, on your client base and what the majority of clients are that you see. But it is something that anybody needs to think about quite carefully. It drops your sort of profit margin quite a lot at the end of the day. And the reality is that by the time you start paying these things off, they are getting older and they may need to start getting repaired or replaced, which is further costing. So there's a lot of nice to haves, but I think any vet rehabber first needs to see how much they really, really need it and get some help in determining what the actual cost is of not only paying back the loan, but also running the equipment.
Yeah.
Your electricity, your water, your chemicals, all of those things. I mean, I've got all the equipment, so I know it adds up a lot.
Yeah, because it's you're quite quick to think about like how much it costs and how much I'm going to need to pay per month, but then you don't think about all the other extra little hidden costs that often pop in. The maintenance, or like on the underwater treadmill, if there's a problem with the heater or the pump. And these are questions that you need to ask, is that, how often will the heater need to be serviced, or the element, or this and that. So we actually had, it was 2 years ago, we had a very awesome webinar on specifically for the underwater treadmill at our online conference, about all the questions that you need to ask before you buy an underwater treadmill. Because I think a lot of us have fallen into the trap where we think it's going to cost this much, and then suddenly all these little costs come in. So do you have any pieces of equipment that you regret buying?
No, I don't. There's maybe some equipment that I won't necessarily replace if time comes to replace it, but they all served their purpose at the time, and everything played a role in building the practice. So I don't think you ever really need to regret anything, as long as you make the best of what you had while you had it. But it's very important to do a bit of a debrief for yourself every now and then and look back and see what was the real cost benefit here. Is it really worthwhile? I think what vet rehabbers are, I think most professionals are pretty bad at working out their own time and the value of their time. So you can maybe say that underwater treadmill cost you 500,000 Rand. So if you take that over 3 years, and it'll be, 10 treatments a month to pay it off. But then you haven't added what do you as a person need to earn for that half an hour or 40 minutes to survive.
Rental of the space, if you're renting the property, there's so many things.
Yeah, sure.
So whereabouts is your practice? Is it do you own the land or are you renting?
So I own the land. So it's in a residential property where I live as well. So it's a work from home situation. So that was just one of the big challenges, was finding the right spot. Purchasing an agricultural property was quite challenging. It was hard to get finance for that because of the nature sort of the business, and getting agricultural finance is quite a lot. And obviously a plot, is a bigger property and can tend to cost a lot more money, especially in an area that's accessible and secure. And I found that a lot of the commercial space, as soon as they heard the word dogs, were not so enthusiastic about continuing the conversation. So, I at one point was looking for new premises and had a lot of visits to some really, really nice commercial spaces, and they just heard what the business was, and they decided not to carry on with the negotiations. So at the end, purchasing my own property was the best option.
Yeah, I definitely think it's better. I mean, if I think about, myself, I rented. And once you get into that rental, every single year there's that escalation. And that escalation has to be accounted for all the time, and if you get, especially on a commercial property, you can get trapped into, that's where you're getting your clients, and your clients are used to being able to you're accessible in that area. And then suddenly the escalations just go through the roof. And this has happened to a number of veterinary practices that are in like shopping centers, and the people that own the shopping centers have the control to be able to say, well, if you want to stay here, then you got to pay. And that, I mean, eventually you're paying so much money that you could have actually bought a property and be paying off a bond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So those are all factors that are very important to take into consideration.
Yeah. So what are the challenges of working from home?
I think as a rule, we're all really bad about separating personal life and business life, because we have such a passion for what we do. But definitely, if you work from home, it takes a lot more discipline to set those boundaries as to when work ends and non-work time starts. So I'm still not really good at that, to be honest. I've become better about seeing clients and not just, agreeing to see clients at all sorts of times and funny times when suits them. But the admin side, because admin isn't directly related to income, we don't tend to factor that into part of our working day. We want to use our working day as seeing clients and getting that income in. So definitely the admin side spills into quite a lot of the rest of one's life. And I think when your office is right next door to your living room, that does certainly become harder to separate the two.
Yeah, because you've got a few accounts to do and you think, oh, let me just quickly go and do them. And it's after hours or on the weekend. So yeah, I completely understand. So, I mean, the one benefit is that you don't have to drive to work, right? You can get out of
That's a
bed.
massive saving.
Yeah.
That saving of, spending 40 minutes in traffic twice a day,
Yeah.
I'll take any day of the week.
So, do you have patients that stay on the property? So do you have kennel facilities, or do clients just bring their pets there and then take them home?
Yeah, no, I don't have. I've got kennel facilities for during the day, so we'll get people sometimes dropping dogs off in the morning and fetching them a little bit later. But I don't keep overnight dogs, no.
Okay. Yeah, because then the boundaries are there are no boundaries at all, because then you're there with the dogs in the night and you hear this one and you're worried about that one, so then you end up spending your whole day there and the whole night there too.
Yeah. And I think it's important to focus on what is it really that you do. Are you a kennel facility or are you a rehab practitioner? So I've learned more and more over the years to be a bit clearer on what the service is that you provide, and not trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah, that's great advice. So let's chat a little about your admin. So are you doing most of the admin, or do you have staff to help you with that?
No, so a couple of years ago we made the decision to change the way we do admin, because admin posts again aren't directly related to revenue. So each person is very much responsible for the bulk of their own admin, and that actually includes my assistants. I've got a driver who does some collection of dogs. He keeps all his own records, does all his own reporting. I've tried to leverage technology as much as I can to make it easier and more streamlined for everybody. I have a bookkeeper that comes and does that side, sort of the accounting side of everything. But everybody does their own invoicing, own record keeping. The bulk of the admin is done by each person themselves. I also don't have reception staff. So if you see a client or you help a client who comes to the gym, you're responsible for making sure that person's account is up to date, all the invoicing is done. It just wasn't making business sense to have a salary that was not related to generating revenue at all.
Yeah, and that's working for you now. So you guys have got a system that seems to work.
Absolutely. There's just so much technology available, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of really, really user-friendly stuff. A lot of programs can talk to each other and integrate and sync. So there's really no excuse to not be able to streamline your whole admin process. The majority of my clients book online. Works really, really well. They can deal with queries online. So there's very little time that anybody needs to spend on phones talking to clients.
Can you give us an example of a software or technology that's been a game changer for you?
My favorite piece of software is something called Zapier. And that can make a lot of different software talk to each other. So it can integrate, and you can set up how it integrates, and it just automates workflows brilliantly. You need to become a little bit familiar with how programming works, but you don't need to be a programmer, and all the software generally has fantastic support. You'll again always need to just take a look at the costing of all the different things that you end up subscribing to. I can get a little bit carried away with that. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Subscribe to that, and it works great. But especially when lockdown started, you had a lot of time to sit down and see what you spend all your money on. And so that's also something that you just need to watch. But Zapier is fantastic. You can use white label software. So for those who are not familiar with the term white label, it's just software that you can sort of tweak to suit your purposes. And Zapier will make lots of white label software talk to each other. So it can make your booking software talk to your accounting software, talk to your CRM software. So it's really great.
So I heard you mention you've got an online booking system. So nobody phones to make appointments. Your clients all know that they go online and they can book the appointments straight on there.
The majority. So some people do still tend to phone. It is a process of behavior change that you need to encourage your clients to do. But the majority of my clients will book online and only phone if they're battling to find an appointment time that works for them, or it's a bit urgent and we're fully booked, and they might phone to see if we can't squeeze them in. But the majority of my clients have moved on to online bookings and they love it. And they prefer it because you can make your appointment 11 o'clock at night or 4 o'clock in the morning or whenever works for you.
Yeah.
And nobody needs to be available to answer a phone all the time.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously being the only physiotherapist, how do you manage taking leave?
I don't take a lot of leave, but I try and empower my clients a lot. So they always have a lot to do at home. I think the first time I took more than a week's leave was about 5 years ago. So this was a good, more than 10 years into my career that for the first time ever took more than a week's leave at a time. But the more you can help your clients to be able to deal with things as they come, the more it will start to free up your options as a physio. I must admit I'm not that great about not being available online for some support when I do go away. So like I said, I like online formats for a lot of things. So we use a lot of online tools. So I do end up answering questions and providing support virtually when I do go away for most of the time.
Okay. So besides being a workaholic, which I think we've definitely established you are, and doing your agility, what else do you do in your spare time?
So I ride. I've got 2 horses. I don't ride competitively. I just enjoy them. I do a lot of clicker training with them and just play around. So I would say my spare time is also all animal related.
Yeah. And what do you think the biggest challenge that you have had since you've opened your practices?
Sure. I would say fatigue. I think compassion fatigue is probably one of our biggest challenges as therapists, because we do want to give a lot into what we do, but at the same time, if you're not managing your work-life balance very well, which I will freely admit I don't do as well yet as I should, probably 20 years in, you do just get tired, and you get you really get sort of exhausted with the challenges that come your way. And it's hard to just always maintain that balance and always remember why it is that you are in the industry that you are in and why you love doing what you do. Yeah. And it has taken a long time to really find the balance, and a balance that works.
Yeah, I think burnout is something that all of us are in danger of getting, because like you say, I mean, and I think also as a profession, I think that we are extremely passionate type of people, we're in it because we care. And I think that also we build quite strong relationships with our clients, strong emotional relationships, because we go through a lot with them. Like if you think about the paralyzed dog that you teach to walk again, and so there's quite a lot of connections there. So I think that the emotional side of things is quite real, and I know for me, definitely affected me in that, the importance of this pet to them is so high. And so with those consultations that we have, they are very emotional, and, you're obviously having to deal with that client and their expectations. And so, I mean, I remember just at the end of a day, sometimes just being completely exhausted, right? When you've just had, especially when you have new patients and new clients, because dealing that emotional side, they come in often distraught, and you have to deal with that. And then, you uplift them a little bit and say, like, no, there's hope. Like, we're going to do everything we can do. And so there are ups and downs, right? It's a wonderful profession. I mean, I love it.
Wonderful. I even find that, you spend 8 hours a day talking, and then in the evenings, you actually don't even want to really chat to your family or phone your family because you're tired of talking to people.
Yeah. Become antisocial at home because you're just tired of talking.
Yes, exactly.
So, Ansi, to finish off, if you could give advice to any therapists that are coming into the field of veterinary rehabilitation now, if you could give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh gosh, just one.
You can give more. Give more.
The most important thing that any rehab practitioner can do is really find their niche and find what they truly believe in terms of the way they want to practice. There's a talk that talks about different Pepsis for different people, and basically what that refers to is don't try and be all things to all people. Find what it is that you're really passionate about and really good with within animal rehab, because different clients are going to have different needs, and that's absolutely okay. There might be somebody else who in the industry, your colleague who's 5 kilometers away, who's a more appropriate person for this particular client and their dog. Be really sure what you're good at, what you want to do, and find a way of communicating that clearly. And spend time doing that. So don't rush to start your own practice. The problem with this industry is that it is very easy to start your own practice. You can do that straight out of college, and most people do. And it takes time to accumulate the expensive equipment, but you can just with your hands start off. But it's worth spending a couple of years working in the industry, if you can work for different people and find that thing that you really want to focus on, and that's your passion. And just saying I have a passion for canine rehab or a passion for equines, that's too broad. Everybody does that, and there's more and more rehab practitioners around now. You need to really know and believe in what you bring that's different. And I think spend time learning what that is before you start investing, because that would go back to how to decide what equipment to buy. It comes back to what do you really want to bring to the industry.
Yeah, I love that, because if you're doing something that you are passionate about and you love, going forward, you're going to enjoy every single day of work, and you'll also just find your place. You'll just be like, I'm okay with this, and this is what I do, and this is what I love. And I also think niching down is so important, because then you can actually become an expert in that field. You can really think about studying further about that, looking at the research, and then you get known for that, and people refer, your maybe a colleague and other vet rehab therapists would refer to you and say, you should really be going to Ansi. She is great with this condition or these cases. And the vets also get to know you for that specific condition or that specific niche. So that's great advice.
Absolutely.
Ansi, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful chatting to you.
No, it's been lovely spending this time with you. Thanks so much, Megan, for the chat.
And thanks for all the tips and advice for those new vet rehabbers that are getting into the field. You've given some great pearls of wisdom.
Brilliant. You must have a lovely, lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. Cheers, Ansi.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. For more information about continuing education for vet rehab therapists, you can go to onlinepethealth.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast and, of course, thank our sponsors, Response System. They are as passionate about therapy lasers and PEMF equipment as you are about veterinary rehabilitation. They would love to answer any questions you have, so please feel free to reach out to them at responsesystems.com, or you can email lisa@responsesystems.com.